Hello and welcome back to the Coming of Cage podcast. I am your host, Derek, and I've got my co-host and partner in crime with me, Ryan.
Hi.
Hi. He waved as well, but if you're only listening to the show, you wouldn't know that. So that's the color commentary there for you. But we wave now because you can see us. You can actually watch us, our faces on screen while we talk. So that's a cool thing. We started that last week with episode 22, Racing with the Moon. This week, however, we are covering the Nicolas Cage movie from 2016, co-starring Elijah Wood, The Trust.
That's right.
The Trust. And according to IMDb, The Trust is about a pair of cops investigating a drug invasion stumble upon a mysterious bank vault.
They
stumble upon it. Yeah. And boy, is that really not the most accurate synopsis for the movie that we could come up with. But that's the one on IMDb. The way we normally do this, of course, is that Ryan, we both watch the movie, but Ryan does a little bit of homework while he watches it and makes a bunch of notes. And then we go through those notes and talk about the film.
That's right. So I want to say right out of the gate that I was actually very surprised by this film. We've watched, I don't know, we're about 25% of the way through his filmography at this point, I think. 20%, somewhere in there. And we've watched some bad movies. And this was not a bad movie. I actually enjoyed this movie.
Yeah.
Which I did not expect. Although I love Elijah Wood. So, that was probably part of it. And that's not to say that this movie is like a masterpiece or anything. It's definitely like goofy and also very serious. Like, I don't know, it's very weird movie, but I enjoyed it overall much more than I thought I would.
Yes, I'm with you 100%. It was really interesting. I caught myself just many times like, what is happening in this
yes
movie?
Exactly.
But like in like a compelling way, I kept wanting to watch it.
Yeah, it's a heist movie. That doesn't really come through in the IMDb description, but it's a heist movie, but it's a very unique heist movie, I think. I'm not like a big on that genre, but the few I've seen, I haven't seen one like this. So
no, I don't think I've really ever watched a movie quite like this. And the two of them, I think that's the key to this is the pair, Nicolas and Elijah are just really great together. They play very interesting characters. And the movie just goes in a direction I was not anticipating at all because like when we go into these, most of the time I don't even watch the trailer. I might read the synopsis that's on the screen on whatever the streaming app is, right? Because it's right in front of my face, but that's it. And this was another to-be watch, which, historically hasn't been the greatest sign of quality for a film.
For sure.
But this was very interesting. It really kept my attention.
Mine too. And it didn't hurt that Nick is playing like one of his most eccentric characters that I think we've seen. Like it wasn't over the top cagey, but he was just very eccentric and fun, and it made it fun and interesting to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He also had a glorious mustache.
He did. And it looked like in the poster that Elijah Wood had a mustache too, but then he didn't in the movie. So that was disappointing. It's hard to tell in the poster because his head's down, but.
Well, because like he's kind of like 5 o'clock shadowed the whole movie.
Yeah.
Right. Because he's not really taking care of himself really well.
Sure.
But speaking of the poster, I just want to say like the poster is not good. It's so like overly photoshopped that like I don't even recognize Elijah Wood on the poster.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like when I saw the poster at first, I didn't know who that was.
However, this is not a review of the poster.
No,
this is a review of the movie, so let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Okay, so right out the gate, the beginning of the like opening credits, Saban Films. Isn't that the same company that did Power Rangers?
That's got to be a different.
There's two Saban films.
Yeah, there's got to because they're Japanese, right?
I don't know.
It's got to be.
I thought it was interesting because you don't see that name super often. So right out of the gate, after the opening credits, you get Elijah Wood laying in a bed with like seemingly his body moving back and forth as if something is moving on top of him.
It could be anything.
And then you get another opening credit, and then you see boobs just bouncing. which appears to be what's on top of him. Not just
Yes.
the boobs, but a full woman.
Well, yeah. I think
Um,
that would have been a very different movie, I
that's
think.
like Mandy 2 is what that's gonna be in. But then it like zooms in on a freckle under her boob.
Yes. Yeah. Because he's not really into
Into
it,
it.
right? He's not focused on it. He doesn't really care. Like, because we learn in a little bit why, right? But he's just clearly in not a good place mentally, emotionally.
Right. And so after a few seconds of that, he's getting dressed and he's putting money on the book stand. So to imply that this is a woman of the night. So that's interesting.
Well, they are in Vegas. The movie does take place in Vegas, which I think is important to call out.
Yes. Which a lot of the Cage movies take place in Vegas, it seems.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that interesting?
There's some weird trends through all these movies that I wish we had a way of tracking.
Yeah. In retrospect, maybe we should have had like categories that we would mark off.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a bingo card for each movie. We should do that. We should have a bingo.
Oh.
Takes place in Las Vegas. Nick Cage dies at the end. Like there's a whole bunch of different things that he does. He hits a woman. Unfortunately, is a thing in a lot of the movies. Anyway, then we get our first shot of Nick Cage because it's kind of cutting between the two of these guys. Mm-hmm. And he has very cagey. If a hair could be cagey, if a haircut could be cagey, his hair was cagey in this movie. Like,
you think so?
Yes, it was like a cartoon character hair, which was great.
Wow. Okay. I mean, the mustache, I think, took my attention.
I love the mustache. Don't get me wrong. Well, it's okay. So that's actually my next note is Cage's mustache is rough. Look, like Nick, from a distance, I loved it. But like when it gets up close, it almost looked like a fake mustache. Like it was glued on. And
I mean, maybe
I don't
it
know
was.
I don't know if it was or not. But
I don't know.
It did not look great upon close inspection. And maybe he just doesn't grow as nice of a mustache as some people do. I don't know. It didn't look good in a close-up. But yes, I loved his hair.
I don't see any facts about the film that talk about the mustache, so I think it's real.
It might be. Well, I mean, I think as long as they don't do any up-close shots, that it's good. It's just when it gets up close, it starts to lose its credibility as a mustache a little bit.
Well, there are some up-close shots.
Very, very close. Like you can literally see like the mites in his mustache. Like the hair follicle mites. No. I'm saying that we all have mites. Oh, you mean like on our hair, like the little tiny hair follicle mites. I'm not saying he has mites.
Are you watching this in IMAX or something?
Yes, I have an IMAX screen in my living room. So then, okay, you might have filled in some gaps here because my next note is cylinder cocaine. Are they going to like an evidence, a big like garage?
Oh, right. Yeah. So yeah, you're skipping ahead a bit. So we learn that both of these guys are cops. They're both police officers in the Las Vegas Police Department, the LVPD, which by the way is apparently not real. I haven't done that research. That's just according to IMDb. That's a fake police department that they made up. But Elijah Wood's character is like kind of like this bumbling, he's just not, what's the word I'm looking for here? He's unprofessional. Right?
Yeah,
he's
unprofessional.
late.
I don't know if he's bumbling. Like he seems competent. He just,
later on in the movie, he seems very, very competent. But in this first shot where he's like going to this crime scene, he just seems like...
Well, he specifically goes and sneaks in through a window and stuff like that so that he can avoid his boss seeing him come in late.
Which we learn is Nick Cage's character. Yeah. So he's going to this crime scene. There's drug dealers. They've got one of the guys, right? Nick Cage is on the outside and he's trying to talk to his boss about some plan he has, which we never really learn what that is. He's just told no. So in that, we find out that
it's like a data entry thing. He talks about it for a second. Yeah. It's like a thing to track evidence and like match up DNA or something. It's kind of ambiguous, but you kind of get an idea that it's some sort of computer program and it's not relevant at all to the movie. So.
No. But it's to create this conversation because his captain or I forget the guy's actual rank basically tells Nick, hey, I need you to go to the auction place. There's a tractor that I want for my son-in-law, and I need you to make sure I get it. And so he's basically taking Nick Cage's character, who clearly is very, at this moment, we feel very focused and passionate and determined, and saying, I need you to go watch a tractor for me So nobody
Right.
buys it at the auction. So that's where he learns. They find that there's a car, right? And they've
Yeah.
taken the engine out of this car, and they've hidden the criminals have hidden the drugs in cylinders that were basically designed to fit where the pistons go in
Yeah.
an engine, which
Yeah,
was
inside the
clever.
combustion chamber,
It was
which
really
yeah, I
interesting.
thought that was clever too.
Yeah.
I do have to take a little bit of issue with this scene because, like, first of all, maybe, and I'm not a police officer. I don't really have any contact with police officers, so maybe this is real. But this is like a huge building, right, where they have lots of like lifts and things for working on cars. If a car doesn't run when it comes into like the impound or is going to go to auction, do they really waste manpower pulling an engine like as if they're going to repair that engine? I feel like they don't do like full on internal engine rebuilds. And I can't imagine finding cocaine in cylinders was like a common thing for them because they seem very surprised by it. So it
Yeah.
couldn't have gone into the engine looking for that, I wouldn't think.
Maybe it was found during like an inspection to get the car ready for auction, and
Like
someone
they took the
noticed.
cylinder heads off?
I don't know, like
That's
because
kind of a big deal.
yeah, I don't know enough about this either. Um,
Well, anyway, I just thought
yeah,
it was interesting. Maybe that is a real thing. If it is, and you listen to this, and go ahead and tell me. But that seems like a bit of a stretch. I mean, I'm sure they take cars apart, but I doubt they rarely. I'm sure they rarely like pull an engine apart to rebuild it or whatever they were going to do.
it does seem like a lot of steps, right? Like, because obviously, if there's places to look, right? Like, under the trunk, for example, or things like that. But I don't know. You hear these crazy stories about how people like put drugs inside of like the doors,
Right. So
or
I can understand
in the
that, but
seats,
the
right?
engine is a different beast.
Yeah. But
Anyway, we
but
don't
what
want to spend too much time on that.
No, but what we find out here, though, this is where we kick off the real movie, though. We find out that the dude who's busted for this, he's got a bunch of priors, but someone bailed him out, 200 grand cash.
Yeah.
And that gets Nick's attention.
Yeah, it gets his attention. He steals all the paperwork. And then on the way out, the guy that was working on the car gets a call from the captain or whatever, apparently, and asks Nick Cage to take more pictures of the John Deere. So that's a thing.
Well, I
But
think it's meant, at least the way I took it, is it like belittles what Nick Cage's character is doing here. And I guess we haven't really, whatever their names are. Stone is Nick Cage. Waters is Elijah Wood.
yeah, I don't.
Stone, like it's belittling Stone, right? This guy clearly at some point cared, right? He was dedicated. He was passionate. He was trying to improve things, make things more accurate. His attention to detail is very clear, right? And nobody else seems to take him seriously or treat him seriously, right? And so his boss is just like, look, I know you have all these amazing ideas to increase everything, but I'd really rather you just watch this tractor for my stepson.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. And so my next note was, man, Cap really loves John Deere because he wants more pictures. Okay, so then
It was it's a huge tractor. I feel like that's like a bigger tractor than what I had in my head. Like the
but I
thing.
mean, it's not a like a full track. It's like a small. I don't know. That's actually a small tractor.
Is that a small tractor? Shows you what I know.
Well, I
About
mean,
farming.
there are smaller tractors, but like that's in terms of tractors pretty small. Yeah,
Okay.
like real tractors have tires that are bigger than that whole thing.
Jesus.
So yeah. Okay, so our next scene, we get our first like really, we get to see the eccentricities, is that the word, of Nick Cage's character, like how eccentric he is.
Yeah.
We get to like start to see the little like things that this character has going on, and they're something. And I didn't notate all of them because they were such like subtle. It's one of the things I love about Nick Cage. He can do these little subtle things that just make a scene that much better.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't notate them all because they happen so quick. And if I'm writing a note, I'll miss another one. And
Yeah.
So
I would really love to know, especially like for a movie like this, which is like, it's a serious movie and he's doing some humorous things sometimes. How much of that was in the script versus how much of that he came up with in the moment?
Just what we know of him is that he likes to, he always has ideas for his characters
Mm-hmm.
and how they would act. And I feel like a lot of that was probably his stuff. But if we ever get him on the show, then we'll have to ask him. We'll add this to the list. But yeah, it was like ice breaking moments. where you would be having what seems to be a serious conversation, and he would like touch somebody's nose or something. Like it was just I don't know. I feel like I would have enjoyed the movie much less if his character was not that way. So I'm really happy that whoever came up with that, whether it was Nick or somebody else, did that. But regardless, okay, so the next scene, he's looked at this stuff and he's called up his partner, Elijah Wood.
Well, it's not. So he's not his partner. So this is where things.
Okay, yeah, he's his employee. Yeah, that's right.
It was an important dynamic because Waters, his boss is Stone. Nick Cage is Elijah's boss.
Right.
So there's a dynamic there. Yeah.
There's a power dynamic. Yeah, and that comes into play later a bit. But so he calls him up and he's like, I found this thing that's really interesting. It's like late at night. And he calls him and tells him to come to this place to meet him. And so they're meeting at a strip club because of course they are. It's Las Vegas. I guess that's what you do. And they're discussing
another point for the bingo card.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so they're having this like meeting and they're talking about this thing, and the waitress keeps checking on him. And this is one of the eccentric things I remember because it's kind of a running gag through the scene, is that Nick Cage asks for a refill on his water. And she's like, sure, hon, no problem. And then she asks Elijah Wood's character what he wants. And he says some drink or whatever. And she says, no problem. And so she walks away and she was holding a pitcher of water the whole time. She does not fill his water. And then she brings back the drink for Elijah Wood's character. And as she walks by, Nick is like trying to get her attention and she won't fill his water. It's a running gag through the scene. It's just very funny. It kind of shows you like how eccentric he is.
I really liked it because like in the first time when he asked again, she's holding it, right? And she walks away. He's like, she had it in her hand.
Yeah. Elijah's Wood character is going through this like file, talking about very serious things and like how this is probably somebody that they don't want to mess with, blah, blah, blah. And he's completely focused on the water. He barely is listening to Elijah Wood's character at all. Yeah. And then like Elijah Wood's character starts getting like stressed out about this, like because there's a lot that Nick Cage is asking him to like find out who this was that paid the $200,000, and he's getting stressed out because this is a dangerous thing he's doing. He's getting involved with bad people, and as Stone can tell that he's getting stressed out, he just reaches over and starts rubbing his shoulder. Which is another thing that would be on the bingo card, I'm pretty sure, because I feel like he's done that in several movies, the awkward shoulder rub.
He's very touchy-feely. You know, I feel that especially this character.
Yeah, in Waters, you get the idea that he's not. So
no,
he does not seem comfortable with what's happening. So yeah, it was a weird thing. So then you get a few scenes of like Waters trying to find out who this was.
Well, wait. I want to talk about the lemon Tabasco sauce bit.
Oh God. Yeah.
Okay. Cause like, this is so funny. So they're sitting there and Nick, I guess, is hungry or whatever. And Elijah's drink came with 2 lemon wedges. And so he just takes one of them off the glass. He just pours Tabasco sauce over it, like way more than any person should ever put on one piece of lemon. And he's like going to eat it. And Elijah's like disgusted by this. And so he gives it to Elijah, tells Elijah to eat it, and he grabs the other one and just does the same thing again. And you know, they eat it or whatever, and Elijah hates it and stuff. He's like, you like this? And he just goes, no.
This scene did a really good job of establishing the weirdness that is Stone.
It was so good. I just love that. I love that exchange so much.
I was more focused on the water, but yes, that lemon Tabasco thing was pretty good too.
It was great.
So yeah, then we get a few scenes of Waters trying to follow or figure out whoever this person was that paid the money. And my next note is Elijah is so inconspicuous because he's the most conspicuous person ever. He's wearing these huge sunglasses and like a hoodie, and he's following this guy, but he's not attempting so he like ducks back behind a wall, but then he just like stands out in the middle of something staring at him for a few seconds and then ducks behind the wall. It is so conspicuous, and there's people just walking around. So obviously he's going to get noticed.
It is like that was not great because like he's also clearly in a part of town that is mostly black people. And he is just this like skinny white dude with like
big glasses and a hoodie.
yeah, right. And it's like clearly this guy is like not normally here,
Yeah.
right? But nobody seems to notice.
Movie magic.
Movie magic.
Yeah, so I don't know what triggered this next note, but I just said I am loving Nick Cage in this role. And this was about like probably 20 minutes into the movie. So, I mean, I was already like all in.
Is this what, well, so what we find out is that this guy that he's tailing works at a casino restaurant. He like, delivers the food and all that kind of stuff. And that, how Elijah catches up to him, because this guy gets a ride from somebody and Elijah doesn't have a car because he followed this dude on like the light rail and stuff like that. So I don't know how he catches up, maybe a taxi or something. But Nick decides to go undercover.
Yeah.
Are you talking about
it could
that
be,
point?
I don't know. That note is before the Russian roulette scene.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I feel like something happened in there. Okay, so Nick Cage meets up with Stone meets up with Waters at some point. It says that he mortgaged his house.
Well,
is this what happened? That's that later.
That's way later.
Okay. So what's the first Russian roulette scene then?
So the first Russian roulette scene is
Ethan Suplee.
Yeah, who he's good in this. I mean, he plays like a total like asshole, but he's really good in it. I'm trying to remember why they needed to meet up the first time. I think they needed access to like a report or some data on something.
Right. Oh, yeah. Okay, so this was actually I remember it now. It was in the evidence place again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, he was trying to get, got told by Ethan Suplee, Waters got told by Ethan Suplee's character to wait for somebody. Well, he gave him this file and said, wait for this person or something like that, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah, and he's like, no, why can't you do it? I have other things to do.
Right.
And so this scene was basically to establish Ethan Suplee's character, essentially. And so Ethan Suplee he's just detective in the movie. He doesn't have a name. No. So he is getting agitated by Waters not doing what he's telling him to. So he pulls out his revolver and drops that. And he says, like, you want to play a game or something like that?
Do you want to flip for it?
We want to flip for it. Yeah. And so then he drops all the bullets out of the chamber like you would for Russian roulette, puts a bullet in. It looks like he's putting a bullet in and flips the chamber in and then holds the gun up to his head and pulls the trigger and nothing happens. So then he points it at Elijah, and who's freaking out, obviously, as anybody would in this situation, pulls the trigger again, nothing goes off, and he has like heart palpitations, and he's like on the ground like freaking out. And then Ethan Suplee's character shows that he has the bullet still in his hand. He never actually put it in the gun. Mm-hmm. So that kind of establishes that, because that's going to come back later as a thing.
It's an intense scene though. Like really, like Ethan does a fantastic job in that scene.
Honestly, he's good in every movie I've ever seen him in. So
that's fair. Yeah. That's fair. But like this is a small part. It's important because it does like set up specific things that are really important to the plot, but it's a small role. And I think he just really like, he just really takes as much as he could from like the two scenes that he gets. Yeah, that was dark. That was a really dark scene. Because like up until that point, like I'm like kind of like laughing a bit about some of the craziness that's going on, like the lemon scene or, some other things that are going on are just making me chuckle a bit. And then this happens, like very sombering scene.
Yes, it's weird because a lot of this movie comes across pretty lighthearted, but then immediately something extremely dark and real happens. Mm-hmm. And it makes you like it. Most of the time, I don't like tone variations in movies, but I actually think it was handled really well in this movie. Yeah. It kind of like let your guard down a little bit, and then immediately like something bad happens and your guard is back up and you're on edge again. Mm-hmm. So I thought the directors of this movie did a great job with that, maintaining like playing with the tone in order to like play with the viewer's emotions. So it was really good.
No, I agree. I think one of the keys is like this is a very small scale story at the end of the day, right? So it's almost like a buddy film. And so it has those like levity moments, but then it has to remind you about like what's actually happening.
There's only really like 4 sets in the entire movie. There's very few.
It's small.
It takes place in like 4 or 5 places, and that's about it. So it's interesting. Okay, so then we get into the scene that you were talking about where Nick Cage Stone decides to go undercover.
It's one of the greatest things that we have watched for this show.
So we got my next like 4 notes are all the different Cages we got in this. We got Pool Boy Nick. Then we get waiter Nick. Then we get towel manager Nick. We get like all these different Nick Cage characters. He's doing different roles in this casino because casinos have pools and hotels and restaurants generally as a part of them. And so yeah, he was doing he was doing all those roles to try and get as much information about this place as he could. And my next note is dirty towels. I feel like it's because he suspected something going on with the towels in the
well, so what happens
place.
is they find out that like there's a truck that's getting loaded up with what looks like laundry,
right,
from the hotel, and it's being delivered to like a convenience store.
Yeah, it's a little weird because like, why does he suspect the towels of all things?
I think because of the pool and showers and stuff, that's probably a good bulk of the laundry that the hotel has to do.
Right, but why does he suspect the laundry and not something else? Because hotels go through a lot of things.
Well, because the guys are actually bringing out laundry bags into that truck. So what ends up happening is during this montage of things that he gets to do, he notices this truck getting loaded up with seemingly laundry bags, and the guy that they've been tailing that he's undercover for is
that's
part
right.
of that.
That's what it was, yeah.
And he tries to go over there, and some dude stops him, I forget, and makes him like go back the other way. And so he notices that like these are supposedly laundry bags, and so he's checking to see if they're hiding stuff in with the laundry before it's like picked up by this other group, like it's a handoff kind of thing.
Yeah.
So like that worked for me.
That's what it was. Yeah, it did for me too. I just forgot exactly what had happened there.
But man, when he's the waiter though, it's so good. He's like, he's dressed like, very, very stereotypical Vegas waiter type guy where it's like almost a tux, right? But it's like missing some pieces. And he's got the tray with the food on it. And he's, the mustache is just like there and it's just amazing. And then he drops the whole thing. And it's just, oh my God, he's so good. He's so good in this montage. And then it goes from like fun, campy, cagey to like off the rails when they're in like a conference room, like he and like some of the other waiters and stuff, and he just is doing like this dance thing.
Yeah, it's showing that he's like trying to get in good with like, I don't know. I don't really know what that was to do because it's not like he ever goes back there, but like it's just to establish, I think, how charismatic this character is, that he's able to like make friends immediately. He has a whole crowd of employees around him that he's entertaining with this dance that he does like 4 times. And yeah, it's not, there's no audio or dialogue in the scene. It's like it's just like a part of the montage. Mm-hmm. So it's just, the video and what other music playing over it. So you're not really sure why he's dancing or what he's doing. It's just, pretty great.
Well, but then you find out like in a scene or two, he gets in the car with Elijah and he, there's like a envelope of money and Elijah's, what's this? He goes, oh, that's my tips. Like I make more money here. And so I think he's actually like legitimately enjoying himself.
Right.
He's like, maybe I should do this job.
I actually think the character is legitimately enjoying himself through most of this movie. Like, what these things that he's doing are things that he wants to do, and he doesn't want to go like take pictures of a tractor or things like that. He's actually getting to do police work, kind of. It gets questionable pretty quick, but
sure, yeah.
So then they decide, I can't remember if it was Waters or Stone, which is funny, the names, by the way, because water with stone, water will carve away stone over the years. Anyway, one of them sends a homeless person in, or like I think
Waters does.
Yeah, he
no, I'm sorry. Nick Cage does.
He has a bunch of pictures basically that he hands the other. These are like old pictures too, like from the little
like
the
a Polaroid.
Polaroid, that automatically send pictures out, and so they're low quality and everything else. But he hands these pictures to Waters, and Waters is going through them, and he's like, "These are terrible quality." And so you find out that Stone sent a homeless guy in and gave him some money to go take pictures of the inside of this place. And you find out that there's a vault, or well, not
this
a
is
vault,
the convenience store that the truck is delivering.
That the towel is, the towel place. And it's not a vault. It's a, you don't really know what it is. There's just a big door that's chained up.
It's in the deep freezer though.
Right. It's way deep in there. And it's just, it stands out. But they see that in one of these pictures. They also see the homeless man's penis in one of the pictures.
Well, because Nick is like, there's a photo in there. I just wait. You'll
Yeah, he's like playing it up like, that we've all met that guy that's like, just scroll through these photos. They get better. And then there's one that's like somebody's butthole or something.
That's exactly what this was.
And that's exactly what this scene was. We've all met those people.
Stone is like having the best time. on
So
this.
my next note was boobs and penis so far. So we had two different genitalias so far in this movie. And spoiler alert, that's the end of the genitalias in this movie. So sorry about that. We should have that on our bingo card too. Boobs, penis,
Nick
and
Cage butt.
Nick Cage butt has. I don't know if I'd say it's been in a surprising amount of movies, but been in some that I'd never expected it to be in.
But it's weird that
So
it's happened twice. No.
yes, it is weird that it's happened. I think it's happened more than twice, but probably not. Maybe three times, like not a lot. Anyway, so then they look up like the plans for this building and find out that this wall is like 3 feet thick steel. So it basically is a vault, they find out. And
Yeah, they pull a bunch of the records, the blueprints and everything. It's all, which is interesting that these drug dealers and stuff would build such a thing and do it like official with permits and stuff.
right. Yeah, because that's how they get the information. They pull up the permits and like the blueprints. That would have to be officially filed with, the city or the state or however that works.
Right. That'd be like pulling the blueprints to like the Wayne Manor and like there's a giant cave underneath with like a T-Rex.
But it's a natural cave.
That's, well, some of it. It depends which movie you're.
Cave. That's true. So then I don't, maybe you can fill in the gaps on this. It's, from what I remember, they just decide they need to find out what's in this vault and break into it. And this is where it becomes a heist movie.
Well, Nick is convinced that this is either filled with drugs or all of the money from the drugs.
Right.
Now, there's no evidence of that other than this thing exists where it probably shouldn't exist and stuff is being brought there from the casino. They still have no clue what's in those bags. So he's making a pretty big leap.
So at this point, it's been, they're cops that maybe do some weird stuff, but for the most part, they're on brand cops. They're not like, doing anything wrong. But then at this point, they start to, you realize that he, at the very least, Stone is kind of corrupt because he's like ordering a drill and getting plans for like the apartment above the
yeah, so there,
for some reason.
there's an apartment above the convenience store, that you could just like someone's living in.
So my next note is Dutch Nick Cage. I thought it was Dutch. Maybe it was German. It's German. But he calls the vault company, I believe, to figure
the drill company.
Oh, is it the drill company?
Yeah.
Yeah, to find a drill that will work for this drilling through that basically. Well, you don't, at this point, you don't really know exactly what they're doing with the drill. I mean, specifically, they're drilling into the vault, but you don't know, like, I guess, specifically where they're drilling or how they're planning on doing it. But
it was not what I had in my head. I'll tell you that.
Me either. But they call this drill company, and the drill company is based in Germany. And so you get him doing this ridiculous over the top German, or Dutch accent. And it was just a really funny scene. Like he's looking in a book and like just saying words from this translation book.
Well, no. So he's speaking German, but he's reading the catalog information for the drill he wants.
Oh, is that what it was? I thought it was like a translation book.
No. He's definitely like this character. I don't know if Nick can himself. This character speaks German.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that makes it a little weirder because he's apparently very smart, but also like super eccentric.
Stone is like a very super one of the more interesting characters we've seen Nick play. I really liked this character a lot. But my favorite bit on this scene when he's talking to these guys at the drill factory in Germany is like there's two guys. One guy's like on the phone, the other like brought him the phone, right? And the dude's like, and this is all in German. Like the guy sounds really suspicious. I think he's a criminal or a bank robber or something like that. And the other dude's like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
It's like these guys know that they're selling a drill to a criminal and they think that's just the coolest thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, they want to make their money,
they want to be part of a heist. That's the dream,
So then we get a scene where they're kind of starting to really plan the heist. And Waters has I think on the top of the police station or somewhere has made a like scale two-dimensional model of like the layout, the floor plan of this convenience store and the room above it, basically.
It looked like a dedicated space where like maybe this is just like a thing that they do when they're going to be like raiding or going into an area where they know the layout. They do this so they can practice.
Right.
You
So
know?
then Waters brings Stone up there to check it out, and for some reason Stone is very worried about his nose getting sunburned and is putting copious amounts of sunscreen on his nose and like surrounding
Oh,
areas and offering it to Waters. Like, so you get that stereotypical like camp counselor, if you ever watched Salute My Shorts or
oh
whatever as a
man,
kid, you got the camp
classic.
counselor with like the just the sunscreen on the nose and nowhere else. And that's basically what we got with Nick Cage in the scene. And he really chews the scene up like with that sunscreen. He really goes to town with it.
Well, I
And
think like this scene just really shows this dynamic of Stone. He's already all in. This is happening. They're doing it, and he has like no care in the world.
yeah,
While Waters is so stressed out and so anxious and like convinced they're going to get caught or killed, right? And he's just like taking it as seriously as possible.
yeah,
And he said like it took him like 3 hours to like tape off
right.
whole blueprint.
And at this point, Stone reveals that he refinanced his whole house to like his
He
mortgage to
mortgaged his house.
pay for the drill or
Mhm.
something like that. Didn't he say he's put 10 grand in and he needs Waters to put 10 grand in also?
Well, the
And it
idea is
kept
like, yeah, that
asking if he's in.
they'll be equal partners, I think is the idea. So they're going to split it.
Right. Uh, and so then my next note was just to kind of like ground what we were watching in this moment. It was Nick Cage with sunscreen nose planning heist with Elijah Wood. Because that sentence outside of the context of what we're doing right now would make anybody go, huh? Because that's a real scene in a movie. If you told somebody there's a real scene in a movie where Nick Cage was planning a heist as a crooked cop with sunscreen on his nose with Elijah Wood, like I don't think anybody saw this movie, first of all, so they wouldn't know it. But then I just don't think they would think that exists, or they
Right.
wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I don't remember what this line was in reference to, but sometimes there's just a quote or a line in the movie that stands out to me that I feel like I have to notate. And it might have been in this roof scene. I don't know. It's my next note. Nick Cage turns to, I think, Waters and says, "I fucking dig you."
Yeah.
Which honestly, normally I would say that's a bad line, but in the context of this movie and knowing that character, it really wasn't a bad line. I just thought it was a funny line,
Yeah.
but it does suit the character.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think like again, like it shows how nonchalant and laid back Stone is about something he probably shouldn't be that chill about.
Yeah, he's more interested in their personal relationship than he is in what they're about to do.
And that goes through to the end of the movie. Like this dude really wants to be Waters' friend. Like
Yeah.
he loves this guy. He cares about this guy. He wants these two to be buddies, like, Butch and Sundance kind of concept,
Yeah. So then so we just found out that Stone is expecting Waters to come up with 10K, and Waters you've kind of seen as is an irresponsible guy, doesn't like have savings or a house or anything that he could mortgage like Stone did.
Well, and he's also like going through a divorce at the same
Right.
time.
But you don't know that at this point, really.
We haven't had that scene yet.
You don't see the wedding ring for a little bit, I don't think, because I've notated it.
Well, there's the scene though where there's all like the boxes in his place that has like a woman's name on them.
I guess that's true. I didn't really put two and two together though.
Gotcha.
Mostly when I saw the wedding ring later, and we'll get to this note, but I just was like, he's married. Like I had no idea, because that could just be a girlfriend moving out.
You're
or
right.
anything. So I don't know.
Anyway,
so you'd find out that throughout this, you found out he's not a character that's really like had responsibility or anything like that. Like he just kind of lives moment to moment, having sex with a prostitute, things like that. So he goes to Ethan Suplee's character and he tells him how much he needs. And so they are going to shake down. I don't really know it. Like it's a donut shop that's a front for drugs, I think is what I took from that.
Yeah, I really have extremely few problems with this movie, but one is why he goes to Ethan's character. Like they just had this scene earlier where clearly it shows that like their dynamic is not a good dynamic.
Well, he
right?
probably knows that he's a crooked cop and has
Is
ways of
that
getting money. I'm assuming.
okay?
Well,
Okay.
because what actual cop would do the Russian roulette thing in the middle of an evidence room? You know what
Well,
I mean?
sure. I feel like the risk involved in going to another cop and being like, help me borrow a bunch of money and I can't tell you why I need cash. Like that
I
just seems
actually
like a
didn't.
risk,
I didn't really have a problem with this because it's established that Ethan, who plays detective character, is not a good guy. So like if he goes to a supervisor and says, "Hey, Waters came to me asking for money and whatever else," are they going to believe this cop that's probably gives them a bunch of headaches every week, or are they going to believe Waters, who Stone is his boss and probably doesn't like
Yeah,
you know?
that's
So
fair.
I didn't really have a problem with that. But
But yeah, it's
anyways,
clearly this is a bakery that is a front for a drug
correct.
thing. Yeah.
And so it seems like it's a regular thing that Ethan Suplee's character is going in and you know getting money in exchange for not
Hmm.
busting this drug ring. And so there's an intense scene where he does this Russian roulette thing. Again, he was supposed to get 2 boxes of money, but instead he only got 1 box. And the box is like, I thought it was actually interesting. It was like
Yeah.
money in the bottom of the box with like a tray of donuts on top of it. So it looks like he's just taking out a donut thing, which is kind of funny considering they're cops and like the stereotype of donuts. Um,
I thought it was a
but
cake. I thought it said happy birthday on it.
oh, I thought it looked like a tray of donuts in the second one.
Interesting. I don't know.
In
Doesn't
any
matter, but
case,
same
yeah,
concept.
it's not relevant.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he said he came in for 2 boxes and they only gave him one. And so he does that whole Russian roulette thing. And Waters was not expecting this. He's again fully panicked.
Hmm.
I think that his blood pressure must have like been ready to explode out of his veins this whole movie because he seems like he's on edge. And Elijah Wood is really good at playing a stressed out character. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, so that worked for him. But yeah, so they do the Russian roulette thing. Eventually, they end up getting the second round or the second box of money.
And it's just really heavy. Like when Elijah takes the box from the woman, like the looks, like he doesn't say anything in these scenes at all, but the looks that he's giving, like you can just see how he has found himself going down a bad path and he can't seem to stop it.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know?
he's spiraling at this
Yeah.
point. But so yeah, that's a heavy scene. Then we get another light scene, right? Which is Nick Cage is going to go buy these guns from this guy.
Oh my God.
And they're sitting in this car. He's sitting in the car with a gun trafficker, essentially, a firearm
Mhm.
trafficker. And he's like trying to make small talk. And it's really, really funny. Um, sometime around this, I don't know, one of my notes in here is interesting camera work because I really liked the way this movie was shot.
Mm.
They really did a good job of like making you uncomfortable like when you needed to be by getting really close to the characters' faces
Yeah.
or the framing of the characters. It's like they were telling a story with the camera also, and I thought that was really good. So kudos to
Yeah.
whether that was the director or whoever that was, did a
It
really
was
good job.
shot in like a really intimate way, whereas like most
Yes,
heist movies are just blockbuster type films. This was not. This is a very intimate
it was a
character driven.
character driven heist for sure.
Hmm.
Anyway, he's making small talk, on this gun run. It seems that as if he's kind of nervous. And maybe that is what he's doing, to kind of break the tension. A lot of people
Right.
when they're nervous, they just talk about random things. And eventually the dude that's driving him is just like, shut the fuck up. And, which I feel like is probably really good. And I guess this guy's just driving around for a while
Mhm.
to ensure that he's not being tailed or that things are legit, whatever. So eventually they get to like this place way out in the boonies.
It's like a quarry. It's like, where we were
Another
in Ghost
quarry,
Rider,
yes. Yeah, or any other. There's a quarry, I think, in some of the other Prisoners of the Ghostland and stuff like that too. But yeah. So they go to like this quarry, and he's looking at the guns, and he's coming in the guns. He's like, "Oh, you didn't file the serial number or anything off, did you? I wanted the serial number." And then he just straight out fucking shoots the guy right in the head,
Hmm.
out of nowhere. Like at this point, it's been very casual. He's been joking the whole time. So again, this is another example of the way that they're kind of playing with your emotions. We had the heavy scene with Elijah, and then they cut to this goofy scene where he's like, he's doing a very serious thing, but he's keeping it very light.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, as he's keeping it light, he immediately murders a guy, which is the first time we've seen anybody in this movie just straight out murder somebody.
It's
Cold-blooded.
Yeah, it is a really shocking moment. Like, he puts on like the dad glasses, so his reading glasses or whatever they're supposed to be to kind of check out the gun and stuff. And in that moment, he just kind of looks like this not serious kind of guy who like is, getting this to have in his home just in case, right? And
Yeah,
then
kind of when he's
boom.
buying three of them, and
Well,
and all
I didn't take it as he was buying all three. I took it as he was like, these were his options.
shopping.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that's what it was.
Now he
It did
obviously,
kind of
yeah.
remind me of this character in Kick-Ass because he also had a character that wore
Oh,
big glasses
yeah.
and a mustache in Kick-Ass,
Oh man, you're
but
totally right.
which we haven't reviewed yet, so
Yeah.
we don't want to get too deep into that. But which I'm very much looking forward to that one though. But yeah, it's an interesting scene, and it's kind of disarming because he's taking the small talk and putting on the glasses, so he's disarmed this guy thinks he's harmless.
Right.
It's just
S- Old dork.
yeah, trying to
Yeah.
buy a gun. And so yeah, then he gets popped in the head. Just casual murder is what I put for the note, which I've had in several movies. Just casual murder.
Well, and it's like it's a clean headshot too. Like,
Yeah,
this is in at night in the dark with a gun that he just got 10 seconds ago, right? And it's just boom. So like clearly he is again like shown to be very competent,
yes, and
right?
he plans these things out.
Like at some point he was probably a very good cop,
Right.
right? Before he was, disillusioned or what have you.
Yeah. So he grabs all the guns and walks away. And then we start to get into the heist. Um, so my next note was pre-heist joke. I don't remember what that was, but I'm assuming that Cage's character made some really dumb joke
There was, yeah, and Elijah's
going
like
into him.
freaking out. Oh, the van. Yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
yeah, Nick was supposed to swap plates on some van and bring this van. And, they get together and he's like, oh, I thought you were getting the van. I was just doing the plates. And like Elijah starts to freak out because they have all this equipment. And what we learn is a giant drill that they have to, put together and stuff. And my favorite part of this, though, is when Elijah's on the side of the road and he's waiting for Nick. And you see this like Dodge Caravan coming up the street. And he
Yeah.
goes, not that one. Please, not that one. Please don't let that be him. Like, and
Well,
it totally is.
the joke was that he said he didn't get a van. Nick Cage's character
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, I forgot that was supposed to be you that does that." And yeah, Elijah's very stressed out about this, and then he pulls out the keys because Elijah starts to like storm off,
Mm-hmm.
and he pulls out the keys and says, I was just playing, man. This is in the moment, like one of the first moments where we actually see him. It seems like he actually has regret for the way he acted because he isn't like laughing about it. He seems genuinely upset, as if he upset his friend.
Well, that's the key, right? Like he really likes Waters and he wants this to be fun. He wants them to be on this adventure together, right? And he didn't mean to really freak him out.
Yeah. And so, throughout this movie, something we didn't mention was that when they were doing the planning, they had to figure out if this apartment had people living in it.
Right.
And so it does have people living in it, and they knew that.
Well, they knew that there was an old guy living there.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is when the actual heist starts. And so they go into the apartment with like they weren't ski masks, but they were similar. They're basically face covering masks of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
I still get it's more of like a tactical mask of some kind.
Right.
But they go into this apartment and there's a younger man and a younger woman there. And the guy was not into whatever's happening. They had guns pulled on him and he was just like, he was doing what he was told, but then at one point they both are like getting tied up and he spits on Nicolas Cage's character while Waters is going and getting stuff out of the van. And so Stone just shoots him, kills him. And because Waters comes back and sees Stone standing outside the room, and he said, "Did you hear anything?" Stone says, "Did you hear anything?" to Waters, and Waters says, "No, why? What happened?" And Stone is like, "Well, he came at me, and I had to do it." And so then we see Waters, look in there and see that there's a dead body in there now, and that the woman that was in there was also still attached to this dead body, which is pretty morbid.
Again, like there's some really heavy, dark stuff in this movie.
Yes. And so, so Waters was already nervous, but now he's full on like flipping out
Mm-hmm.
because he's now murder has entered the scenario, and for him, it hadn't before that. He didn't know that Nick Cage murdered that
Right.
Stone murdered this other character. So, this is the first time where things are getting very, very real.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I had more casual murder for the next note.
Well, because like I think one of the key differences between the two characters, right, is that Stone is totally cool with improv. If something doesn't go as planned, no problem. We'll figure it out. We'll just do something else. And Waters is very much like, this is the plan. Stick to the plan.
Yeah.
You know?
So then they start setting up the drill. And this is another quote. Nick Cage, Waters asks Stone a question, and Stone responds, "You know the drill." As if like not the
Yeah.
drill that they're drilling with, but
Well, it was a pun.
Yes, it was a pun.
That's great.
And it's in like this very tense moment. So again, it's kind of they did a good job of that. I don't want to keep bringing that up, but
yeah, but it is really good.
yeah. So I can't remember exactly the circumstances, but at some point, Stone goes back into the room. I think he's gonna he's gonna move the girl,
Right.
and he just is pointing the gun at her. I don't remember exactly why at this point he was pointing the gun at her, but you could just tell that he just wanted to fucking kill this girl. He just wants to kill everybody basically in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very weird. But we get a lot of scenes of just them like drilling and changing out drill bits and things like that, other kind of montage. And my next note was, this is the weirdest movie about drilling since Armageddon. So they're talking at one point, and another quote from this movie, Nick Cage is joking about something and then he just says JK. And you have to keep in mind, this is like, they're not making him try and look like a young man in this movie. When I said his haircut was cagey, it was like a very kind of outlandish older man kind of haircut with, the balding on the sides. And, it just looked like, an
he's
old
playing
man.
His age. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then to hear him say JK is like he's trying to connect with this younger character. So it was interesting.
Yeah, and it's also like kind of that nonchalant, like laid back, not a care in the world kind of personality that he's got going.
So here's like the first shot where we see a close up of his ring, of Waters' ring that he's still wearing, even though we think they're divorcing. It's kind of unclear. They don't really ever say that he's divorcing, but I
think it's implied that she left him.
But why would he still be wearing the ring?
Because she left him, right? Like he still wants, like he misses her. He still wants to be with her, right? Like, because in the earlier scene, right, like he actually like smells her sweater or whatever. Like I think,
and then picks up dog or cat shit with it. So I mean, it's it doesn't give me the emotion of somebody that's still connected to her.
Well, I think he's mad, right? Because she left him, but he still loves her, kind of thing, and he feels abandoned.
I feel like they could have done a little bit more.
Yeah.
You had your one complaint about the movie. I think my one complaint with that, I wish they had developed that just a little bit more to make us a little more, like, not that we weren't connected to Elijah Wood's character. It would just make it a little more personal if we know that, there's some on again, off again things going on in his personal life that's really affecting his stuff going on. No, it is implied, but for somebody like me that's dumber, you need to be a little more in your face.
No, it's really glossed over. And so is Stone's character. Like, we learn very little about these guys from a personal perspective, right? Like we kind of have skipped over this, but like we meet Stone's dad like a couple of times. He's on screen.
Wasn't it like Jerry Lewis or somebody that played him? Yeah.
It was his last role. He actually wanted to be, he and Nick are really close friends, and he wanted to be in the movie. But like I guess he was a cop at some point, right? Obviously retired because he's an older guy, right? And so like there's a bit of a dynamic there where maybe he doesn't respect the kind of cop his son has become or something. That's implied. But like, again, like maybe that could have been fleshed out a little more. It's a short movie. It's only an hour and 32 minutes.
Yeah.
So maybe
they could have gone a little, they could have added another like 8 or 10 minutes of the movie to flesh some stuff out for sure.
Yeah.
So they get like all the way. So it says, I think there were 37-inch walls or something like that. And so they keep measuring this hole to see how far in they are. And they get to their last drill bit, and there's like 3/4 of an inch left when this drill bit breaks.
No, the band breaks.
The belt.
The belt. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I expected them to just like grab a belt off somebody's waist or something and use that for 3/4 of an inch. I feel like that would have been a better solution. But instead,
But it also seems crazy to me that they went through all this trouble ordering this drill from Germany. They have extra drill bits, but not like one backup belt.
right, that's true. Um, so, you know, we mentioned that Stone is kind of an improv guy. So his idea is to build essentially a small tube, like a small pipe bomb and drop it into the hole.
That's
And so
amazing.
the next few scenes, they like empty out a bunch of bullets worth of gunpowder into this canister, like into like a drug
It's like a
bottle.
medicine bottle, yeah.
Yeah. And they put mattresses up over the windows and stuff like that. And I just want to say, I'm not a physicist, okay? But my understanding of explosions and how that all works is that it will go, the fire and like explosive power will follow the path of least resistance, which in a scene like this where you have a 30 some inch hole with 3/4 at the bottom, if you blow that up, all that pressure would go up the top, right?
Uh-huh.
There's nothing stopping and giving it a reason to push down.
Mm.
But for some reason this works. Okay, I'm not a physicist, but it does break through the 3/4 inch of steel or whatever
It's tough
somehow.
because like we don't really know the strength of the thing that he puts together because like we just see like an assortment of bullets. We don't necessarily know how much it is. I don't know. And it does seem like a pretty decent sized explosion.
It also, like, this is like the longest night ever because they do so many things during this night that it seems like it's a 20-hour night.
Well, we even
Like,
skipped over the cop that shows up.
yes. Okay. Yeah. You want to cover that?
Sure. Like, so, yeah. So there's a cop kind of patrolling the neighborhood. And he is played, by Ronnie Thurman, Ronnie Thurman Jr. And he like saw suspicious people kind of bringing equipment in and stuff. And so he catches Elijah Wood's character and they're kind of talking a little bit. He's like, no, I'm a detective. It's all good. We're undercover. I really need you to turn your lights off. Right. He says that a few times stuff. And I think like things are going really well until Elijah's like, yeah, don't call this in. This is really like off the books undercover. And then clearly this officer is like, I don't believe you
Well,
anymore.
also during this whole thing, Nick Cage's character literally has a gun pointed at the cop like he's ready to murder him. Again,
From
going
the
to the fact that,
window.
yeah,
Yeah.
that he wants to murder everybody in this movie.
What's he gonna do? He's just gonna shoot this cop in the middle of the street and then leave the car there? Like, I don't know what that thought process is,
I
but
don't know. I think it's a backup plan,
is
right?
it
Like if
yeah.
the guy won't leave or like tries to radio this in, then he's gonna pop him.
But like clearly this officer does not believe Elijah by the end of their conversation. Right? It's not said out loud, but it's clear on his face and his actions that he's like, something's not right here. But he gets in the car and he drives off. And I keep expecting that to come back. And
Yeah,
it never
it never
does.
does.
It never does.
So
But
yeah,
like that's another thing though that happens that night. Like you're right. Like this night, like
goes on and on and on.
mm-hmm.
But so they get through, and I think at this point, and you probably thought the same thing, they were drilling into the top of the vault to get a camera in there to see what was in the vault so that they could, I at this point I assume maybe they were still going to do the cop thing and, do the right thing. Even though he had murdered a couple of people, he was just corrupt, right?
Right.
And that he was going to like report this and get a team to come in and confiscate these drugs.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point it's revealed that that's not what they were doing. They were drilling into the door to get a clear view of where the tumbler for the lock so that they could actually get into the vault.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have thought that Elijah Wood's character would have known something was on when that was the plan, because why would they need to get into the vault?
Well, he knows at that point that that the goal is to steal whatever's in there.
But I don't think he does, because because when they get in there, he like starts arguing with Nick about how they shouldn't be taking this.
Well, that's because of the kind of vault it ends up being. So like skipping ahead a little bit, right? Like they're expecting this to just be a metal room with bags of cash and drugs, right? And they're going to grab a couple bags of cash and leave, right? But it's not. It's like an extremely sophisticated, clean vault where there's like trays of marked diamonds and organized coins and gold. And like, this is clearly like very high end, very organized, very specific, like mob gangster stuff, not just some drug runners. And so I think he gets spooked.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really know what the differences between breaking into a vault of a bunch of drug dealers or breaking into a mob vault is, but
I
either
think,
way, it's a bad deal.
yeah, I think in his mind, he's like, well, we're just going to steal a bunch of unmarked cash from some drug guys and they'll never find us. They'll have no idea who took their money, and that'll be that. But if you steal a bunch of like marked diamonds that have, serial numbers associated with them and coins that have serial numbers associated with them from like the mob that has resources,
Right.
right? Then they'll come after you.
Yeah. So kind of in between, like we said, we skipped ahead a little bit, but kind of in between this, there's the scene where Nick Cage is up in the apartment still with a camera, that like a scope that he's got his eye on, and Elijah Wood's character is down trying to do the tumbler, like get the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a pretty stressful scene, even though you pretty much know that they're going to get in there, right? The movie wouldn't really progress if they didn't. But they say that it has a fail safe, and that if you hit two wrong numbers or something like that, then it would lock and you wouldn't be able to get it open.
Right.
So it's kind of a stressful scene, and Nick Cage's character is like really struggling to see the mechanisms. But they do get it open. And yeah, like it goes into like this completely clean, like white room with inside the 36-inch walls are, it's the room is completely empty, but you can see like a bunch of squares and rectangles all over the wall where it's like what's the things you get at banks, a safety deposit box type deal. It's like that, except they don't have a dial or anything on the front. It's literally just blank front, but it looks like a bunch of different boxes essentially in the wall. Mm-hmm. And so they go to one that was left open, which if you're going to be having this kind of vault, I don't know why you would leave one open, but Nick Cage kind of walks over to it and looks inside and sees a bunch of diamonds. And Elijah Wood's character goes and opens another one, and I think it had diamonds in it too. Either way, they had a bunch of this is where they start to realize that it's diamonds and like other valuables in the vault.
Well, it's like it's very specific too. It's not just like a tray of diamonds. Each diamond is like in its own glass container. They're all like marked on these velvet kind of inserts, And so I think like that was the big change for Waters, was like, well, we can't just take the cash and buy whatever we want. We now have to like flip a bunch of stolen jewelry and coins, which has its own set of risks involved. And so I think he just is like, this is not what I signed up for.
Right. And so, Stone is still gung-ho on getting all this stuff. So I think they start to like clean up upstairs and get ready to pack up all the diamonds downstairs. But while they're upstairs, Stone, being the very good cop that he could have been, notices something off kilter on the wall. So he goes and looks at it and pulls like this painting back or something. And behind it are a bunch of like not consumer level firearms. Like they are stuff that
heavy duty,
like military grade. Yes, there's like 10 guns all lined up in this vault, or not this vault, this like hidden area with like ammo and some other stuff. And so he immediately gets suspicious as to whose house this was, because originally it was supposed to be an old man. Mm-hmm. And then they get here and it's a young man and a young woman, and then he finds this gun stash. And so he goes to go interrogate the girl, and while he's interrogating the girl, Waters sees something off about a cushion on something like an ottoman or something, and so he lifts that and he finds a gun underneath that, like a very fancy gun,
a fancy pistol,
like gold-plated type, mother of pearl grip type gun, like you see, a lot of drug dealers have in movies, very stereotypically. And so he goes to go interrogate the girl. Was this before or after she made the call?
This is after, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so at some point in this, we need to touch on that. Elijah Wood character, he's feeling bad about this girl, right? He's feeling very guilty. So he goes in there and she says, please, I've got a 3-year-old at home. I need to call his father so that, he's taken care of. And so, Elijah Wood's character, not being as good of a cop necessarily, or as good of a criminal, I should say, as Stone, calls the number for her and lets her talk to him. And he writes down the number on his hand, he has her write down the number on his hand so he can dial it for her, and then holds the thing up to her ear, and it sounds like a call that a woman would make to a father. So there's nothing very suspicious there.
Right.
And so, yeah, they find these guns and Nick Cage's character goes in and kind of interrogate her and find out who she really works for.
Mm-hmm.
And how does that end? I don't remember how that ended. She doesn't really tell. She just says, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. I was just with the guy, right? Isn't
Right.
that how it goes? Yeah, I was just with the guy.
She's really set up as just like wrong place, wrong time.
Yes, big time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Nick Cage's character pulls a bunch of bags out and they're like getting ready to empty this vault.
Well, he's got
And
like, I don't know, 8 hardcore like utility duffel bags.
yeah.
Right. And so Elijah's like, you knew about this. Like he starts to get suspicious. Like this is where you start seeing cracks in their relationship. Right. He's like, you knew what we were going to find down there. Like, are you trying to pin this on me? Waters is getting more and more.
Yeah. Elijah at one point says, I don't know what this is right now, which is exactly what I was thinking in the same moment. So it's like he was saying my thoughts out loud. And so when they go back down to the vault, it turns out that that Waters has locked the vault again and like wiped off the combination. And so Stone kind of goes nuts on him and like is threatening to kill him.
Well, it escalates. Like at first he's like, hey, can you open this back up kind of thing. Right. And that's where Waters is like, no, I can't do this. Like we're going to get killed. Right. And like Nick had talked about how like he bought them plane tickets to go to like the Bahamas or something like that so they can go and celebrate.
Yeah.
And Waters is just like, he's trusting him less and less. He thinks that Nick's going to like pin this on him. And like,
yes, at this point,
and
he starts to get that kind of mentality that he's going to be the one that has to take responsibility for this one, that Cage's character gets off scot-free, and that he was brought into this because he's kind of a or more inept like character, less capable character.
Right. And so like Stone starts to escalate. It's like, please open the vault. Like, I'm only going to ask you one more time. Open the vault, please. And he's getting like more and more intense, more and more intense. And then
he gets like straight up scary. Honestly, yes. This is a character that we've seen joking this whole time. I don't know if I've ever seen Nick Cage be scary in a movie, but in this moment when he's screaming at Elijah Wood, I mean, he is like fucking terrifying, man. If that was screaming in my face, I would be terrified. And I'm not, ashamed to admit that.
It is a great scene.
Yes.
Like it is so good. And it's just, again, like it shifts the tone, right? To like kind of these bumbling guys who can't figure out this heist quite right to, like they're going to like blow each other's heads off. Like it was, very well done.
So he does open the vault again for him. And while Nick Cage is unloading or filling a bunch of the duffel bags, and he comes back upstairs at some point, or no, Elijah Wood's character goes back upstairs at some point. But during this conversation, the guy, Nick Cage's character, talks about his plan about how he's going to murder the girl and dump her off. Because she saw
his face at some point.
Right, because she saw his face when he went into interrogate her. And so my next note was, of course, he's going to murder the girl because he wants to murder everybody. But then Elijah Wood's character goes up into the apartment again, and Nick Cage's character is expected to be following. And instead of like grabbing supplies or whatever, he goes and grabs that gun that he saw that Nick Cage's character did not see under the ottoman or whatever it was, the cushion. And he like sets up in this bathroom where the girl is and has the gun aimed directly at where Nick Cage's character should be walking through.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, he's entirely convinced that he's going to be the fall guy, and that if he doesn't kill Stone, then Stone is going to kill him or pin it on him somehow.
Right.
So Nick Cage's character walks by and he shoots at him and hits him, but he doesn't know where. And so he's like he walks up to, this is a very tense scene too. Mm-hmm. He kind of is peeking around the corner trying to get a visual on what's going on. And so they start shooting at each other. Basically, Nick Cage didn't die. He's shooting back at Elijah Wood's character through the wall, and Elijah Wood's character ducks behind the wall and then immediately comes out blasting and kills Nick Cage's character. And then he's like going through his pockets and sees that he really did have 2 tickets to the Bahamas. Mm-hmm. So at this point, you realize that while Stone was a corrupt cop and like a bad dude that was murdering people, he did really just want to be friends with Waters, and he really genuinely picked him because he thought he would be able to do this with him.
Yeah, like as far as like the 2 of them were concerned, Stone was on the level.
Yes,
Yeah.
he was honest with him. He really cared about him.
He was just super like he says this a couple of times. He's the power of positive thinking, and he was just being
Right,
this really optimistic, positive guy. Like this was going to work. They were going to be millionaires. They were going to go live the high life together and celebrate together, and it was going to be like this adventure. And
right.
Elijah was just like that wasn't believable.
Right.
You
And
know.
so, at this point, the gun that he had found is not silenced or anything.
Right.
But Nick Cage's gun is silenced. But my next note was, how did no one hear the gunshots? Because I know they still had I think they still had the mattresses and stuff at this point, but gunshots are very loud.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess the only thing that they have going for them is that it's like 5 a.m. and nobody else lives in this building.
Right. And
Right.
so then we find out Nick Cage's character is actually dead. And so my next note was Nick Cage dies at the end, because that's another bingo box checked.
That's right.
So Elijah Wood's character loads up the girl into the van,
Well, he returns all of the
all the
stolen
diamonds.
goods. Yeah.
Right. And then locks it again and takes the girl and goes, puts her in the van and says, I'm going to drop you off, out here, and then you can get home and you can forget this ever happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's driving like way out. It looks like in the desert, Nevada desert. And this van rolls up on him. And another van rolls up on him. And basically like 3 vans box him in. And he sees the number on the back of the van. And he looks at his hand and it's the same number that he had dialed for the girl. It was like a dry cleaning van or some shit. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was like a commercial van, but the phone number was the same as the one that girl had told him to dial.
Right.
And so it's not really explained how they tracked her out this far. Maybe they were just following him the whole time. But
Well, there is a shot like right when he turns onto the street that like there's a shot of the rear view mirror and a van like changes lanes. And so like there's no way for anybody to make that connection other than like why would they show that?
right.
Right. So I think like that was just what that was.
Yeah. And so he's like freaking out when he realizes this. He's like, who did you call? Who did you call? Blah, 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 blah. And, I'm going to shoot you through this wall, or so he says through the seat or something like that. He says he's going to shoot her if she doesn't answer him. And she doesn't answer him. And the back of the van opens up and he gets killed. And the van
He tries to like
goes
show
off
that
road.
he's a cop or whatever.
Right.
And,
He holds up his badge and, they shoot him anyway. And the van goes like off road, whatever. So Elijah Wood dies at the end.
And the woman gets in the driver's seat and
pulls the van over.
And she stops right before like a semi comes by or whatever. And
yeah. And the vans keep driving. They just drive off.
yeah, they just leave her, which like they're not even going to check on her.
So
like my work not to check on her.
My last note for this movie was I don't understand, because
then we get like there's a small montage of the evidence locker and they're putting the drill into the evidence locker with all the other stuff.
Yeah, which doesn't really finalize anything for me. I feel like it could have done without that scene, but we don't really know at this point what happened, like who she called, who that person in the room was working for, who the people that came and killed Elijah Wood's character, who they were. It's just kind of implied that it's like the mob or something.
It's all very open-ended,
yes.
Right? Because it is certainly possible that she had nothing to do with the vault or the guy in the apartment, and she just was also connected to other criminals, right? Because like that's whatever, right? There's no way to know if any of those 3 things are really connected to each other or if it's just a bunch of coincidences.
So I think I have a little bit of an explanation on some of it. So so the title of the movie is The Trust.
Mm-hmm.
This is referencing the trust between Stone and Waters,
right?
And then that gets broken, right? But on another level, a trust is like a gathering of wealth set aside for something,
right?
So I think that also the trust was what is in the vault, and I'm guessing that it was a trust because it's also on a third level, like between like the corrupt police and the mob and all these people contributing to this one like collection of wealth. That was the best I could come up with. But
interesting.
But the vault in itself is a trust between several parties.
Right. I mean, that makes sense. Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it.
But it is open-ended, so that could definitely be not what they intended. Who knows? But yeah, that's the end of the movie. I enjoyed this movie quite a bit. I would have liked a little more clarity on things. I don't really love open-ended movies,
Yeah.
where things aren't explained that are kind of important. But I did, in this case, enjoy the movie, regardless of that. But
I did. Yeah. I'm more or less with you. I liked it a lot. It is just left like it's a very somber ending, right? You know, forget like that there's no like tying up of things at the end, but it's just very sad at the same time. Um, it's just kind of weird. Like I I would have liked to have known I don't need to know everything, okay? But it would have been interesting just to know like what her deal was.
yeah,
You know, like this dry cleaner thing, like that's just another front, kind of like the bakery was. It's just a different kind of front, you know. And then we never even learn what the vault is for, who it's for. So like it's just nothing is answered. And I think some of it, I don't need everything answered, but I think having some of it
she
answered.
was also like the only woman in the movie, other than like the prostitute at the beginning. There's just not a lot of women in this movie. It would have been nice if she even had a name. She didn't even have a name.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that in here, right? Like, yeah, she is just
She's the only
woman.
woman that's in more than one scene.
There's big Irish guy. There's yeah, I mean, Ethan's character is just detective.
Yeah,
You know, there's drug dealer. I mean, Jerry Lewis's character is just Stone's father,
right.
right? So like,
And
there's
I'm
a
not
lot
saying
of
that we
that,
need like a ton
but
of lore or anything for this movie. We don't need like, it's not Star Wars where every background character needs a name.
right.
But, with a woman that's in a good portion of the movie, it would have been nice to have a name or any kind of development instead of
Hmm.
just she's a helpless lady that turns out to not be helpless.
Yeah,
Um, anyway, if we keep going too much longer, then this podcast is going to be longer than the movie was.
I know, I know. I did want to call out, like, so you mentioned like nobody really saw the movie. You're very right. So it only grossed worldwide 321 grand.
Yeah, that's not great.
No, on an estimated $9 million budget. So like I didn't know about this movie, and I like both of these actors a lot. And I'm a little sad I didn't know about this movie because I really liked it.
Yeah, this is definitely in like the top 5 movies that we watched so far for me.
Right? It was good.
Yeah.
So, all right. So with that, then I think it's time for us to rate the movie. If you're joining us for the first time or you don't remember, we rate our movies on 2 different scales: overall quality and overall caginess, both 0 through 20, because there's a lot of movies and we want to make sure that we can tell where each movie is. 0 is low, 20 is high. So, normally we start with you, Ryan, but I was thinking that maybe this time we would hang on a second here. I got to get my thing fixed. Oh, come on now. Sorry. Okay. I thought maybe this time I would kick things off,
Sure.
give you a little break from that. I really liked this movie quite a bit. I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was really good. And so from a quality perspective, I'm probably going to rate it a little bit higher than I, would have thought. So I'm thinking that I am going to give it, let's see here. Where am I? Here we go here. I think I'm going to give it a 14.
That seems reasonable.
That's where I'm going to put it. That puts it on par with The Family Man and Moonstruck as far as my scores are concerned. What
Yeah.
about you?
I don't think it was as good a movie as Moonstruck. What did I put Moonstruck at?
You put Moonstruck at 16.
Yeah, that tracks. Because I enjoyed Moonstruck, I think, more than you did. But I was going to put this at a 15. So because it was definitely, for me, not as good as Moonstruck. Moonstruck would be higher on my list, but it was really good, surprisingly. Yeah. At least I should say it wasn't. It was enjoyable, and there was a lot of things I liked about this movie, even though there was some weird stuff going on with it. So yeah, I'm going to be at a 15 with that.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you completely. It was super interesting. It was unexpected. I've never seen
the best Nick Cage movie we've seen so far that nobody else has seen. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Moonstruck, if you mention Moonstruck to anybody who likes Cage, they're going to know exactly what Moonstruck is and they're going to like it. If you mention The Trust, they're going to have no clue because only 17 people saw this movie in theaters. And it's on Tubi now. Like, it's not even on a
Right.
main streaming service.
Exactly, which is just normally not a good sign. And even for us, like if I maybe I should have been tracking like what streaming services I was watching these things on, but the ones on Tubi are
Usually pretty low.
yeah. Yeah. All right, so caginess. So Ryan, this one goes to you. Where would you put this on the caginess scale?
So it's kind of a tough one, right? Because he's not overtly cagey. He's very eccentric, and it's everything that he's doing, all these weird eccentricities are kind of downplayed a bit. Like he isn't over the top, like the Leaving Las Vegas scene where he's dancing like while buying, it's not like that. Or like Vampire's Kiss doing the whole, which we haven't watched yet either, but doing the whole like alphabet.
Right.
It's not like that. But it's like a lot of subtle caginess. Some of it is not subtle, but like the sunscreen. But I think, I don't know, man. It's tough. I feel like I'm at like a 14 maybe on caginess, or
Okay.
13, somewhere in there. Where are you at? Maybe that'll help me decide.
So that's really interesting. So I was going to put it at like an 11.
Okay.
Because I think, it's certainly more so than like it could happen to you or something like that. But you're right. Like it's not super overt other than maybe a few of those scenes in the casino montage where, he's the waiter and he's got a very
Right.
specific aura or he's doing the dancing, right? Like there's a few moments like that. And so I'm just kind of like looking at my scores from like a caginess, and I gave, The Family Man a 10, Spider-Man.
It was way more cagey than The Family Man, I think.
Right. Zonderlei's a 13. And Guarding Tess was a 12. So I don't know. Maybe I'd get a 12. I'm going to give it a 12.
Okay, I'm gonna go with a 13 then, because I feel like the Zonderlei, it was as cagey as Zonderlei, but in a different way.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. All right. Well, so there you go. So that gives us a 14.5 on quality and a 12.5 on caginess between the two of us. So, that certainly puts it in the good and cagey quadrant of our Cagiometer.
Right, which is kind of a barren quadrant for the most part.
There's not much. Yeah. I mean, most of the movies are not in that quadrant. So it's in good company, I think. Like this is a good one. This is definitely a movie I would recommend people watch if they like either of those actors.
Yeah, I probably, if they're just an Elijah Wood fan, I probably wouldn't recommend it.
Oh man, I think he's so good in this.
He is good in it, but if they're an Elijah Wood fan, the chances are they're probably not a Nick Cage fan. I think because those two don't cross over in general.
Not normally, but
I would, if it was for me, if it was a Nicolas Cage fan, I would 100% recommend this movie. If they're like Con Air and Face Off and some of those other kind of well-known Cage movies, The Rock. Then I would say, yeah, you're probably going to enjoy The Trust. If you're just going to like leave for a movie to watch on Friday night at home by yourself or with a partner, and just like enjoy and kind of be perplexed by and laugh at, then I think it's a good movie. It's not overly dark, like something like Dog Eat Dog, where it's just depressing.
Yeah.
Or Joe, which is just kind of depressing. It's a good one that you can enjoy and be entertained by throughout the length of the movie. So
it's a very like of the stereotypical like peaks and valleys. Like I really think from a technical perspective, this movie is like really following a lot of best practices, right? The cinematography, like we were talking about, is like really intimate. The story has these high and low points where it's not a comedy, but it's also not completely depressing,
Correct.
and the characters are just, they're deep, they're rich, they're interesting. Yes, I would have liked a little more backstory, but what we do get is all really good. And these two performances are fantastic.
Yeah, I agree.
So, okay. All right. Last bit of business is we have to find out what movie is going to join our Wheel O Cage. So the Trust is going to come off the wheel and we're going to add a movie to the wheel. And so the movie that's going to be joining the wheel is The Croods.
Great. Can't wait.
Yeah, The Croods. So The Croods is going to join the wheel. Technically, it's The Croods: A New Age, but since you and I have never watched the Croods movies, maybe we should watch the first Croods before we watch the second Croods.
Is he in it? Is he in the original?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I was going to say that we've kind of talked about this off camera, that if we get a movie that's part of a multiple movie series and we haven't seen the first ones, that even if we pulled up one of the other ones, that we would just start with the first one, because we want it to be equal playing ground for us. We don't want to go in and watch Crudes 3 when we've never seen 1 or 2,
Right.
because I feel like that would take away from the movie.
No, I completely agree. And like, that's why like Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, we could cover, even though we haven't done the first Ghost Rider on this show, because we've seen Ghost Rider.
Yes,
we've talked
we've
about
both
it
familiar
before,
with
you know, so that's
Yeah.
unique. So, okay. So we'll add the first Crudes to
Sure.
the wheel. So we'll do that. But that's it for this week's episode of the show. Ryan, is there anything else you want to add about the trust?
I lost my shirt. I lost my energy. Listen here, folks. I've got something to tell you, okay? That's not the right quote, but that is a relevant quote for what we're doing here. We've been doing this podcast for 20-some episodes now, at the time of this recording. We're selling shirts, okay? And you might be thinking to yourself, well, I've got shirts. I don't go out topless. Obviously, I already own shirts. Well, okay. That's a fair point. And you know what? So do I. I have shirts. I'm admitting it here in public right now. I have shirts as well. But what I don't have is a shirt supporting this podcast. And you may wonder, why is that important? Well, if you're listening to this podcast right now, then you have something that I like to call BNE. You may have heard of its sister, or perhaps brother, BDE. But in this case, it's BNE. You have Big Nick energy. I know this about you because you're listening to this wherever it's posted right now, and it's promoting our podcast. So you've got to have some sort of BNE going on, Big Nick energy. And you know what? What better way to show your Big Nick energy than with a shirt supporting your favorite Nick Cage podcast? And you might say, well, you're not my favorite Nick Cage podcast. And to that, I say, stop listening. I don't like you very much. But if you didn't say that, you should go and buy one of our shirts. They're not that expensive, okay? And a little bit, yes. Do I make a little bit of money off of it? Not directly, but the podcast does. And then we can do a little more advertising, get a little more people in. And if we have a little bit bigger budget, then maybe you won't have to stare at a video of me with a bunch of creepy mannequins behind me in my office. Maybe we'll do a recording from the Bahamas.
Ooh.
That's up to Derek. I don't know. I don't handle the funds. But that's why it's important, because we want to make a better end product for you. And every little bit, will help us get closer to that goal. So if you have BNE, if you feel like you're walking around and you just need to overact and react to something, if you need to scream about your hand in the middle of a bread shop, if you need to tell somebody to put the bunny back in the box, if you're thinking about switching faces with somebody, buy the shirt, okay? One of them. We have several options representing some of our favorite Nick Cage movies, some of which we've reviewed and some of which we haven't. Actually, I don't think we reviewed any of them yet, but whatever. That's
not on this show.
So go buy these shirts, show your support for the podcast, and rock that BNE that everybody else will be jealous of. It's guaranteed to get you people that want to make out with you. Guaranteed. That's my guarantee. Whatever kind of people that you're into making out with, it will get you those people. And they will probably have BNE also.
That's a big promise.
It's a real promise. Yeah. And that's straight from Coming of Cage Podcast, LLC. not me directly.
The show is not an LLC.
Derek, I'm going to need you to calm down. This is from the heart of me, but mostly the Coming of Cage LLC. Okay. And so buy the shirt. They're not that expensive. I don't know when you're listening to this, but they're going on sale the day that we released our episode on the trust. They're going to have a small sale so you can get it for a little cheaper. And you're supporting us. You're supporting us making cool content. And, the 20 of you that listen or less, we love you. And, we would love to see some of you in these shirts. So if you could grab a shirt, take a picture, send it to our Twitter, send it somewhere, we would love to see that. So we're going to be rocking them. I think probably in the next few weeks, we'll both have one of these shirts and we'll show it on camera because we're big fans. Yeah. Derek, anything you want to add to this? Please don't say anything about what I've already said. I've covered most of it, but any of your personal thoughts on this?
No, you're good. I do just want to add that if a shirt's not for you, for whatever reason, we are going to have a lot of other options. You can get mugs, you can get pins and stickers and notebooks and all this other really cool stuff because it's going to be on TeePublic. We're going to have our TeePublic store. So any of the gear that TeePublic really offers, we are offering pretty much all of it. So,
that's right.
Get a shirt and a mug.
Put it on your laptop.
Right.
Or buy 100 stickers. Go slap it on strangers' cars in the streets. They'll be wondering, what is this great podcast, this Nick Cage podcast? I don't care what you do with the stickers.
Do not vandalize other people's property.
Right.
Vandalize your own if you want to vandalize your own property.
Do not vandalize other people's property. We do not endorse that. But if that's what you decide to do, we can't stop you. And we appreciate the coverage.
But April 17th is when the sale begins. So please go check that out. You can go to comingofcage.com to find our links for that, or follow us at Coming of Cage to find our posts about it. If you do get any of our swag or gear or merch or whatever, and you do want to take your photos at Coming of Cage, comment at us, post that type of stuff, tag us, please. I think it will be a lot of fun. We'd love to see that stuff out there. So please go check those things out.
Yes.
All right. Well, then that is going to be it for us this week. Thank you so much for listening to the Coming of Cage podcast and our episode on The Trust. I am Derek. That is Ryan over there.
That's me.
That's you. And we will be back in a couple of weeks to talk another Nick Cage movie. To find out which one, go to comingofcage.com and follow us at Coming of Cage to find our Wheel O Cage spin for the next film. Thanks for listening.